Welcome to the Soccerish podcast. Christina, Unkel, Lori, Lindsey, and today we have an incredible guest for you. Pablo Bayona-Sapag joins us here today. He is with Club 11.
We got a 1998 Thomas school bus and we gutted the inside and turned it into a little mobile American soccer museum. Rubber and debris like flying to our windshield. I was like, oh, it feels like an action movie.
That's where his mind goes. Everyone's like, death. And he's like, God, I wish I was recording this. I'll buy your spare tire just for you guys.
Yeah.
A little chip in. Except you're having whiskeys before games, and we were like trying to play in championships and stuff.
Oh man, yeah. I try to think of basketball. I try to think of baseball. Maybe it's just in my head, but I think those are almost like sports of yesterday. Thank you so much for having me on. I guess in terms of background on Club 11 and a little bit about myself, the founder of Club 11, editor-in-chief as well. And we started back in 2018, just telling stories of different soccer communities around the country. Initially, a lot of it was focused on match day stuff, so MLS, NWSL, USL, and just really any sort of competitions that were going on in the US. And then eventually we evolved to doing interviews with, again, players in MLS, NWSL, USL, and then eventually just anybody who's doing anything positive for the sport here in the US. And now, of course, our latest iteration of telling stories and kind of, telling everything that's going on with soccer around the country. We got a 1998 Thomas school bus and we gutted the inside and turned it into a little mobile American soccer museum. So it's filled with a lot of memorabilia from 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, and stuff that we've picked up along the road, donations from people around the country that just, at every stop, somebody gives us something new to display further down the road. So it's been cool to see that grow. I think that's, I guess, a little bit of background in terms of Club 11 and a little bit about the bus as well.
Yeah, and I love it. Real quick, I'm going to show a picture of the bus. I know Kev will do his thing and go snap it and whatnot, but one of the reasons I'm showing this one, because this is my favorite, it's like all proper semi-trucks. There's like a little error. It's so retro.
Yeah.
Wait, where are you headed next?
Oh man, so Texas, the Open Cup was kind of like the main thread that we were following this year. But then during the summer, obviously in the breaks between I think it was like the quarterfinal and the semifinal, there was like a month and a half break, and we were kind of going to all these different places. We're with Vermont, Portland Hearts, Washington Spirit. But now we kind of said like, okay, the Open Cup is going to be our main thing that we follow. The final was kind of like our final stop, at least for this year. And yeah, it was now over in California, just working on a different project. So I'm sure very similar to you guys, always just in hotels and kind of just running around everywhere. But
or in a bus.
Or in a bus. Yeah, that's
Can you sleep in the bus?
No, that's a question that we've gotten often, whether we sleep on the bus or not. But initially we thought about it, and then we were like, no, you know what? Let's just keep it as kind of like this museum, and we'll get a cheap motel here and there, rather than sleep on it. So yeah.
And that's where you two saw each other recently, right? Was at the Open Cup final in Austin?
Yeah. So that was so we had done an interview for our first print magazine. So we released that at the beginning of the year. And that's kind of tied into the bus and all of that, how we could take the magazine in the museum and show it to people around the country. So it was great that was the first time that I met Christina, was when we did that interview, and it was a really fun one to do. And then I guess, we were just kind of in touch throughout the year. And then thankfully we were able to run into each other at the final in Austin completely by chance. Yeah.
Yeah, I loved it. It was I met them, so it's great because like Lori, Niall, Kev were talking. They're like, find people who tell stories, and I was like, wait, I got a guy. I got a guy whose job is to tell people stories and to help bring it to life. And that's kind of where, how did you guys find me, by the way? So yeah, it was really, really cool. I was like, everyone's like, who's this Club 11? I'm like, I don't know, but little things I track. It's kind of the reason we started, Soccerish podcast, first soccer podcast USA, now Soccerish, is to tell the stories of people who are doing things in and around soccer and really creating the US soccer fan, for lack of a better term. It's, it's still a new sport in our country. So like, one, how did you find me? Because no one ever tells a story of referees, and I don't think I even
Yeah. No,
And then
so
two, believe it or not, I actually had my cleats with me, or at least had my turfs. I was trying to play pickup with you guys the day before, but Champions League ran over. So yeah, I was going to show up
yeah.
and play. Not
Yeah, no, we'll have to put a pin on that one. We were so excited. We're like, oh yeah, Christina's gonna come and play. Maybe she'll ref, she'll commentate. But we'll have to say that for another time. But yeah, I mean, I think for the story that we did for the magazine specifically, we wanted it to be like a snapshot of time right before the 2026 World Cup. We'd obviously for years been hearing of how 2026 is going to be this moment that kind of changes the sport here in North America. And for us, we wanted to have the magazine be kind of a little bit of a time capsule of how everything looked right before this watershed moment. So we wanted to highlight
mm,
different stories from around the country, across all levels of soccer in the U.S. and in all these different disciplines, of course. So we had our cover star was Tim Weah from the men's national team, so we were able to interview him over in Italy, which was super fun. We had stories with USL players, NWSL players. We had one with Brianna Pinto, who she did the speech at the FIFA Congress to get the World Cup for North America, which was awesome to kind of get to hear her story. And then obviously stories with fans, artists, all of that. And then when we were thinking of, who could we do, whose story could we tell that is somebody who, works as an executive, has been a referee, and obviously commentates as well, as rules
there's a
analyst.
lot of those around.
Yeah, but we thought like, yeah, I mean, Christina kind of does it all, so it would kind of be really perfect to get her insight in terms of all these different I guess like pockets that she works in. So that was a super fun interview to do. Thank you, Christina, again for being open to share your story. But yeah, I mean, I think in terms of how we found you, I think we had known about you for a few years. Just kind of seeing all the work that you'd been doing. So yeah, when we thought of the magazine, it was like, oh, okay, perfect. We could reach out to Christina and hopefully she says yes, and she did. So that
Fun
was great.
fact. I think Lori fits that category. Lori refereed. She played for the U.S. Women's National Team.
Well, I
She
refereed
commented on
when I
TV,
was like 12.
and she
That's
manages the
hilarious.
U.S. Women's National Team TST. So I
Yeah,
think Lori,
yeah,
you fit that category as
Yeah, we
well.
yeah,
already did one like 3 years ago, didn't we, Pablo?
yeah,
Yeah, it was
yeah. That's
awesome.
why it's so funny. Obviously when Christina, when you mentioned jumping on the show, obviously I was like, oh, I'll get to see Lori again. We did an interview with
Yeah.
her back in 2021. Still, it was like one of the I guess early interviews that we were doing, just when we had kind of started to do a little bit more of these editorial profiles and all of that. And it was super fun to get to do that one with Lori. I know the photo shoot was in the Philly, I guess like the market and all of that.
Yeah, it was
So
awesome.
yeah,
We went all
it
around
was
my
great.
favorite spots in Philadelphia, so
Yeah,
that was cool.
yeah,
Oh, that's
and
fun.
Pablo, what I know a little bit of this, but I haven't heard the story for a while in terms of like why you wanted to start Club 11 or like
yeah,
what your background is in soccer. Because I think a lot of times when you see people that start something similar to Club 11, even though
yeah,
it's very unique in and of
hmm
itself, is that people have soccer has inspired them or it's driven a lot of part of their life. It's been a
yeah.
focal point. So what what has your background been like in terms of soccer and like what was kind of the driving force behind Club 11 for you?
Yeah, no, so for me, I grew up in Peru until I was, 10 years old, about to turn 11. Um, and obviously over there, I think, you're born and, it's just immediately soccer is just part of your DNA essentially. So I can't remember a moment when I was growing up when I wasn't thinking about soccer, whether it was playing it, watching it, talking about it with my family, my friends. Um, and then moving to the US, it was a little bit of a shock. Initially, I moved to New Hampshire, so it was first time I had seen snow. There were no soccer fields. It was like very a jarring transition, I would say. But then eventually, played it throughout high school when I moved to Maryland. And then, I knew I was never gonna go and play in college. I think had a very similar experience to I feel like a lot of people who come into this country. It's just you don't know the teams that you're supposed to be in, how the system works. So a lot of times it's just like, okay, I'll play for fun, whatever team any of my friends says I should join, like, yeah, I'll join and come and play. Um, but then of course it's that thing when you go into college, you're not thinking about necessarily following a career in soccer. But that's kind of how we started in 2018. Initially, it was my brother and I over in DC. and Wayne Rooney had just come to play for DC United, so it was a super exciting time for soccer in the city. And yeah, my brother just applied to get a credential and shoot photography at a DC United game. And I had always enjoyed writing and kind of telling stories throughout my childhood. So I would just write the captions for any of the photos that he would take, whether it was like on any of the players or any match days that were happening. And then from there, there were different people around the country that kind of saw our work. So that was also another inspiration for a lot of the stories that we tell. Is yeah, hopefully kind of show maybe younger generations as well. Like yeah, you don't need to be a professional player to work in the sport that you love. So yeah, that's kind of a little bit of background on myself and Club 11.
I love it because I think that's where I definitely know that's where the first year when Apple TV took over MLS and right featured it,
Hmm.
a lot of the comments that we would see in the social media side of it and is like, how can I just watch my team? Right?
Hmm.
How can I just subscribe to a channel for New England Revolution, right? For NYCFC, for Inter Miami, etc. Because that was an enlightening thing to me back then was that a lot of people didn't watch the league in its entirety, right? They didn't
Yeah.
know every single score line. They didn't really know any of that. Where if you go over to England, like you're on the tram, and you can hear everyone talk about every single score line and who did what, and who impacted. Yet here in America, because we're so huge, everyone is very regional based, and I think
Yeah.
even from like the commentary voices, people are missing from the audience as well as even commentators missing being able to commentate even on the radio specifically for their team itself, right? Because then, to your point, you're
Yeah.
pulling these stories that aren't going to be able to get coverage on a bigger brand just because there's too many commercial or
Yeah.
advertisements, or as I learned in England, adverts that you can have, but you can't be able to flesh out these stories. So I think it's really, really cool because that's really what tells. I think that's what tells the story. You think of Wrexham. Literally,
Yeah.
when I talk to people that don't know anything about soccer, which is quite often, I, tell them there's two things, right? Like, relegation promotion. I'm like, right. Oh my God, I forgot the name. He was just wearing, it was a Kansas City. He was just at a football game. He's wearing Current City. Ted
Jason
Lasso.
Sudeikis. Jason Sudeikis. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
Ted Lasso, right? That helps me with promotion relegation explanation to Americans who don't know the game. And then Wrexham.
Well, he didn't know the game still 3 years in.
Still figuring it out. And then Wrexham.
Yeah.
That tells the emotional part of the game and why this game is so huge everywhere else outside the United States because they see, the ticket taker or the person who works in admin has been there since she was a child,
Yeah.
right? And it's like a family lineage thing. So thanks for telling these stories. I think they're great. Like when you've been on the road. So how long has the bus been on the road for?
Yeah, so we bought the bus in November of last year, and then we kind of kept it
Okay.
very hush hush, just doing renovations and all of that. And then we set out, yeah, the first or second week of March. So it's been on the road for, yeah, I guess 7 months at this point, which is crazy to think about.
I'm like, how many times has it broken down?
Yeah, that's happened. Yeah, at least a couple times. I remember there was when we were going from Orlando to we were gonna do Orlando to Louisville and then from Louisville to Indianapolis. So it was like, at least like 20 something hours of just driving. So we had to split it up on multiple days. And then we were passing through Nashville. Um, and then we kept like hearing this light that was just like the oil light, just telling you that it was low. And we like refilled
Yeah.
it, we checked it with a oil dip, and then like a few miles down the road there was like nothing. So we were like, okay, like we're very clearly like leaking oil. And we pulled off to the side of the road, and I don't know if this is like poetic or ironic, but it was at a funeral home. And at that point we had only been on the road for like, I don't know, 3 weeks
This
maybe,
is
and we
was
were all
this the
just
first trip?
yeah, so we were just like
Oh no.
sitting in the empty parking lot of a funeral home, just like, oh my God, like what are we going to do? Like we just put all our savings into this bus. The mechanic that came out to see us, it was like a Sunday or Saturday at like 6 or 7 p.m. The guy clearly wanted to go home, but he was like, "Oh, you guys should just get a new bus." We're like, "What do you mean? Like we put so much into this." And then it was funny because then we put on our stories. We're like, "Hey, we're if anybody's in Nashville, we're just broken down on this empty lot. We can set up the bus and you guys can come and take a look." And there was one person that came out, and he's the entertainment coordinator at Nashville SC. So he came out and he gave
Oh,
us like he brought like a box of stuff to give to the bus. And it was really funny because, we got to meet him, got to talk, and he kept, reassuring us. He's like, guys, like, don't worry, like, everything's going to be okay. I know you guys are going to be able to make it. And then it's funny, I think that was like maybe round two of the whole thing, round two or three. And then now for the semifinals, we were able to stop in Nashville and see him again. So it was kind of like a
yeah.
nice little full circle moment. But there's been multiple stories like that with the bus. Like we had a whole like tire situation when we were up in New England on the way down. We had to be at a game with the Red Bulls on a Saturday, I think, or on a Sunday actually, and then it was like Saturday again at 5 or 6 p.m. and we're on the road, and we usually have a car that drives behind the bus, and I was driving that one, and we just saw like the tire like pop, all this like
Oh
rubber and
God.
debris like flying to our windshield. I was like, oh, this feels like an action movie. But then we were able to
I love
like
that's where his mind goes. Everyone's like death, and he's like, God, I wish I was recording
I
this.
got it was crazy. That's what Justin, who's the one that drives the bus, he's like, damn, I wish I'd had my dash cam on. But thankfully it was one of those things where we were able to just pull it off to the side of the road and everybody was okay. But thankfully we were able to get all of that sorted, and then we made it to the game in New Jersey the following day. Woke up at 7 a.m., drove like 6 or 7 hours, and then we made it on time. So there's been a lot of those moments, but obviously I think it's all just, I guess, part of the experience, I suppose.
Yeah, okay, first of all, this is reminding me of, does everyone who's like involved in soccer and driving either a bus or a van have some sort of tire situation? Because not that I'm wishing on
Yeah,
that, but I remember when I was like in eighth grade and we were going to an ODP camp, and
yeah.
all of us, I'm from Indiana, Indianapolis, so we are all piled into this like 15 passenger van, right? And our coach was driving us like 3 hours away down to southern Indiana. And literally everyone, we're just like cruising, and then like freaking right tire blows out. And
Uh,
our, it's like, it's over. And you're just like, what just happened? Everyone's okay. Thank goodness. That's the most important. And then you're just stranded on the
stranded.
side of the
Yeah,
road being like, okay. So I feel like this is like, unfortunately, like a common theme.
yeah.
But with all of that said, do you have a favorite story that you've had that you've been able to
Mm.
tell, or a favorite story when you've been besides this one um,
Yeah.
that you've been able to experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think one that sticks out, and this one isn't necessarily Open Cup related, but a lot of the again over the summer we had this big break in between rounds, so that kind of allowed us to do a lot of stuff up in New York and then the New England area. So it was really interesting to get to drive the bus like straight into Manhattan, because at that point we had only driven on like open roads and highways and all that stuff. But driving through the city was very stressful. We had a stop that we did with Bayern Munich at Rockefeller Center. So seeing the bus there, how far it had come from like the first stop that we did was in Nashville, and that was a really cool story just because it was the first soccer game and sporting event that they'd had since the hurricane. So a lot of the stories that we were
Mm.
able to tell from there were really moving, I would say. And yeah, but going back to I guess like the summer, then going up to the New England area, uh, we had taken the bus up to this tournament called the Icarus Cup. So they're the ones that make the Icarus jerseys, and they host like different competitions around the country. The main one that they do is actually in Philly, and that's the one that we typically play in. But since we saw there was going to be one in Boston, we were like, okay, we'll take the bus up to Boston and kind of play and all of that. And then we saw that the USL 2 final was going to be in Vermont that same day. So we took the bus to the tournament in the morning, and then we all just like packed up and drove 6 hours up to Vermont that same day to make it to the final. And I think that one was a really cool story, just because the uh, the stadium was sold out. It was 2,500 people inside the stadium. And then on the hills overlooking the stadium, there were 2,500 other people. So there were just as many people outside the stadium as there were inside. So that one was like an incredible story, because we had texted the team. We had done some coverage with them for the past few years. Actually, one of the photographers that kind of joined Club 11 from the very beginning, he'd cover the first game in Vermont Green history. So we kind of had a relationship with the front office, so we were able to just text them and say, "Hey, is there space for the bus? Can we take it?" And they were like, "Yes, absolutely." So they put us on top of a hill, and you could just sit down and look at this sea of people watching, um,
That's
like a USL2 final. It was incredible. And then at the very end of the game, one of the players called Owen O'Malley. So he's kind of like a hero up in Vermont. We had by chance photographed one of his games when he was playing in college. So he had been following us for some time. And on our way up to Vermont, he kept texting us. He's like, "Oh, I'd love to see the bus. I'd love to see the bus. You have to bring the bus." And at the end of the game, he came on the bus with the USL2 trophy, and he was like, "Yes, let's get some photos, all of that." And then he took the jersey off his back, and it had like flare burns from when he jumped onto the crowd, and I guess all the flares were going crazy. And he just took it off and then just handed it to us, and he's like, "Here you
That's
go,
cool.
guys. Like, you guys can. This is my donation to the bus." So I think that's kind of a story that encapsulates a lot of what we've experienced at all these different places. It's just you meet all these different people that care a lot about their own particular teams, and they have. It's funny some of the stuff that they'll bring onto the bus and kind of give us and show us and showcase it. So yeah, I think that Vermont story is really special, obviously because of the importance of that game. I think a lot of people when they watched it, it was like, oh, okay, like if this is happening in USL2, maybe um, there are a lot of great things happening around the country. I think from this whole journey, my main takeaway has been that there is like really something very special bubbling underneath the surface in all these different communities that a lot of times a lot of people maybe don't get to see or get to hear about. But when you visit them and you talk to people on the ground, you're like, yeah, the U.S. is a soccer country. A lot of people might say that it isn't, or that sometimes there's a lot of focus on maybe some of the negative things related to soccer in the U.S. But really, I think from this journey, it's been like, no, there is so much positivity. Things are going in the right direction, and all these communities are going to be, I think, the ones that kind of propel the sport forward in a way that I think we would all love to see. So yeah, lots of crazy stories on the road, I would say.
That's deep because I am someone who says the US is not a soccer country, and you're
Really?
saying it is, and
Hmm.
I believe you. So I think you're able to convert me. I can be persuaded based on facts, by the
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, I
That's
mean
how
now
it works.
this is going to be a tough one because obviously I think with your background on law and being an attorney and all that, I feel like my arguments would need to
Just give
be
me the
airtight.
facts. Give me the
Um,
facts.
but I would say but it's difficult because I think it's a lot of times there's like an emotional argument, I would say, and a lot of it is obviously like evidence that I've kind of just gotten to experience myself. So maybe I don't have like the statistics and all of that, but I think it's really interesting to I think back of like Asheville, for example, when it was the first round of the Open Cup and they play in a field that is like roped off, so it's like there's no stands and it's just like people just watching. On one side there's like a forest, and then on another one there's like a college, like apartment buildings. And we went to this game and there were like college students watching from their dorms up on the buildings, and then there were fans kind of like watching from the forest, which is crazy. And then on like a little hill, and I remember like the last 10 minutes of the game, after kind of getting all the video and photo that we were doing on that day, I was just kind of standing there, looking at all these people. And to my left, there were like, I don't know, I would say like 50 or 60 little kids just kind of like playing, just kicking. There were like three different goals, and they were just like, bam, like just kicking, kicking, kicking. The classic stuff that I kind of experienced when I was a little kid, when I was in
Yeah.
the schoolyard back in Peru, and I was like, oh, this is like a free for all, like everybody's just chasing around the same ball. And then there was a parent that or somebody that came up to me because they saw me with like a camera. They were like, oh, what are you doing here? Like, we got to talking, and he didn't even know that the World Cup was happening in 2026. And I was like, oh, like that's really interesting. So like, what are you doing here? And he was like, oh no, like my kid begged me to come to this game. All his friends are coming, and he was like, yeah, very adamant that we need to come to this game. So at that point, I was just kind of sitting there, and I was like, oh yeah, it's really like we are in Asheville, North Carolina. We're not in, let's say Miami. We're not in New York. We're in Nashville, obviously a community that has kind of gone through this, a very difficult situation with the hurricane. And there's all these kids playing soccer, begging their parents to come to this game. So I think that was something that showed me like, okay, there is this next generation that is coming beyond all of us. That their first experience, and when you ask them like, are you a fan what soccer team do you support? And they're going to tell you, oh, I support Asheville SC, from in the USL too. So I think that is, I think, one thing that I've kind of seen across the country. It's like in all these levels in the pyramid, which I think is one of the very thankful that we decided to follow the Open Cup, because it gave us the opportunity to see all these different teams around the country from USL2 all the way up to MLS. And a lot of the things that you see and that you hear from people are very similar. Again, not to go back to the example with Asheville, but I go back to that first stop, and we were just in a little pub, just hanging out with 15 or 20 people, and the leader of the supporter group, his name was Bullhorn Ben, and he had just like picked up a trombone from his closet. He was like, I've never played it, but our supporter section needs like a music section. And then last week, and when we were in Austin, I spent all of the game right next to the music section, with all the Austin supporters, and it was like you would see this whole like band of people doing drums, and they had like trombones, saxophones, the whole thing, the whole 9 yards. And I was like, it's super interesting to see that, yeah, like in all these places, even though the resources and everything, there's like differences obviously in terms of like the level, the resources, all of that, but there's all these similarities that are happening. Whether it's one person in Nashville picking up a trombone, or it's 20 or 30 people, doing a drum line and picking up their brass instruments and forming a whole group. Over on MLS, it's like we're all doing the same thing in whichever way we can. And I think the most special thing about this journey is seeing that, yes, like no matter the level, no matter the resources, there are people out there that want to push soccer in their communities. And I think, when I think of growth, I try to think of basketball, I try to think of baseball, and maybe it's just in my head, but I think those are almost like sports of yesterday. I think the amount of kids that I've seen running around at all these games, like super interested, touching all the different memorabilia around the bus. You can tell that there is something there that, maybe we won't see this happen in 25 years or 35 years, but I do hope that, maybe at the end of my life, who knows, maybe when I'm like 70 or 80, God willing, I get to see that, yes, soccer did, in some sense, make it in this country. And I feel like that's kind of the trajectory we find ourselves in, even though sometimes we don't necessarily get to see it, at least not yet. But yeah.
Ooh, ooh. I
Oh,
mean, we're
yeah.
believers here. I mean, we've seen women's soccer come so far
Yeah.
in our careers, in our lifetime,
Yeah.
and Lori and Co leading a lot of that, of the championing and the campaigning. So, I mean, I would not say don't. Maybe, hopefully, in like your 40s or your 50s.
Yeah.
Let's say that it's not.
Yeah.
I love when you said like 70, 80s, and I know a lot of people would cringe based on that thing. I thought 60s was old. Sorry, boys. But I thought 60s was old when I was younger. It definitely isn't. But no, I agree with you. Like at the game in Austin, and that was one of the last stadiums. I think there's one more other stadium,
Yeah.
MLS stadium I've never been to. And just to see the Verde and to see that fan crowd, I remember taking like videos of the wall, right?
Yeah, it was crazy.
And yes, I'll send you those. But I remember taking videos of the wall, and it blew my mind just how good
Yeah.
they were. We had just gone to the Riveters. That was one fan base that's
Yeah.
always captured my heart, and scared the out of me too, because they
Mhm.
yell at me all the time. But finally able to
Yeah.
connect with them, I think telling that story and that passion of those individuals is super helpful. Who
Yeah.
else is on this incredible wild ride with you? Like, I feel
Yeah.
like there's like new person I meet every single time.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess the core group would be five of us on the bus. So Justin, he does video, but also I guess now this year he learned how to drive a bus, and he's the only one that allowed to drive it. So he's the one that's really like racking up the miles, and then it's also
Not
my
freaking flyer
brother.
Delta miles, that's fair.
Yeah, just road miles on this one. So yeah, it's Justin, and then my brother Gabriel, then Tyler, who
Mhm.
also does video, and Kiros, who does photography, and then myself. So it's been cool, I think, getting to do this with just essentially, I would say, my best friends, and with people that I know that I feel like I've been very lucky to meet, just because they kind of look at the game in the same way that I feel like I have, and it's amazing to get to meet people who are obviously very talented at what they do, but also see the game maybe through the romantic lens that I feel like I've seen it over the past few years.
What's the biggest, or obviously the Open Cup was the primary focus this year.
Yeah.
What is the World Cup next year? Is that bus going to be going there? Listen, you need to have some extra tires strapped to that bus.
Yeah. I think. I mean,
I'll buy your spare tire just for you guys.
We'll
yeah,
all chip in.
yeah. No, but I mean, I think for now it was it's I think a very interesting place to find ourselves in because it's like yeah, 1 week since basically the end of this Open Cup journey, and now it's like okay, what are the plans for 2026? But yeah, we're kind of in that stage of thinking, okay, what do we want to do for this huge year?
So you actually kind of, I've been in the back of my mind, if you don't mind me
Hmm.
asking, like, how do we fund the bus? How do we fund you guys? How do we get you telling the stories and on the road? How do we get you a spare tire or crying out loud?
Yeah, I think so for us initially, in terms of how Club 11 works, we have obviously the brand facing side of things, so the bus and the stuff that everybody kind of sees on Instagram. And then we have the
Mhm.
agency side of things where, whether it's brands or clubs or anybody who wants to produce stuff in the soccer space, we're able to support on the production side of things, on strategy, marketing, all that type of stuff. And we usually take the money from those projects and kind of use that to fund all these crazy things that we enjoy doing on the brand side of things. But then of course like the sales of the magazine were able to help us, um, whether it was buying gas or just having a nicer hotel for the night. That was also something cool to see, is that people were very eager to support in that sense. They would buy a magazine, buy one of our shirts, and all of that goes straight back into all the initiatives that we do when it comes to the independent storytelling that we do. There were even people that would just kind of hear a story and be like, "Hey, here's $50 for gas, down the road," and you would be like, "Oh my God, like that is incredible!" So I think for us, yeah, the magazine and obviously our shirts, any other stuff on our shop, helps us directly fund all these different initiatives. So yeah.
If you could have not a blank check, because you could probably go wild with that, but like what is one idea that's in your, we're trying to make this manifest this and make this happen. If you could come up with the check, what is one crazy idea you have in your brain right now that you'd love to execute if money wasn't an issue?
Crazy idea. Oh
Or not
man,
an
you're.
issue, but money wasn't a thing. Yeah.
I think it would definitely be bus related. I think that's kind of our main thing. It's like, okay, we saw this whole year, and the positive, I think, reaction from all these different communities, and you see, um, I think one of the things that I love seeing the most was seeing little kids like jump on the bus and kind of like touch all the stuff, like run around and kind of fall in love with the game in a very like tactile way. Just like
Mhm.
outside of the screen, it's like you're touching all these things, you're like hearing stuff, you're kind of like falling in love with the game, at least in the way that I think I fell in love with it when I was a little kid. And then also, kind of seeing all the conversations that people would have on the bus, the things that people would tell you. But there were all these other ideas that we had for the bus at the beginning of the year that we weren't able to implement. Um, I think one was obviously we would have loved for it to be a thing where like maybe people could add their name to the bus, maybe do a mural outside the bus, something that would kind of scream like when you see the bus on the road, it's like, yeah, this is the soccer bus. So all these different things that would kind of enhance the experience for people when they visit the bus. I think that's kind of where my mind goes if there was a blank check. And obviously maybe making it a little bit easier to get from place to place, maybe hire a driver or something like that.
I was gonna say, I
Um,
think you should hire a
but
driver for his sake. Like, I'm gonna advocate
yeah,
for him right now.
exactly, and that's probably where Justin's head would go. Although I think towards the end of the road, towards the end of the journey, I think he was a lot more comfortable with the bus. And I mean, there's part of me that thinks that maybe in a couple of weeks he's gonna be like, man, I miss driving and all of that. Um, but
So
yeah.
basically, it like took him like 6 months of potential death, and now he might be okay.
That'd be
Comfortable.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you know how it is. It's like you step away from something, and I think back to like playing soccer or whatever. Sometimes like you're training very hard like every single day, And then, when it's over, you're like, oh, okay, I can breathe. And then a week later, you're like, man, I miss, being there with all my
Yeah.
friends, like going through all this type of stuff. So maybe he'll
Does the
miss it.
bus have
But
a name? Does the bus
oh,
have a name?
that's that's a good one. We did a poll on our newsletter. So our newsletter is focused on a lot of like just historical stuff, like random stories from across soccer history. To give an example, like there's this story of Neil Armstrong took like a little soccer pennant from a team in Argentina. He took it up to the moon,
Yep.
and then when he brought it back, like he gave it to I guess like the Argentinian ambassador when he returned from the moon. So there's a lot of these like stories that we like to tell on our newsletter, and that's kind of where a lot of our most engaged audience is. And we like ran a poll in terms of like did a whole bracket of like, okay, like we just came up with like
A
multiple names, and we're
bucket.
like, okay, like you guys can decide what the name is gonna be. And it ended up being Woody. I think it was very like obviously the bus is like made out of wood, the inside as well. And I think it's also like it looks similar to some cars. I think that somebody was telling me that were very popular in like the '70s and stuff.
Like the
So
old station
yeah,
wagons, I
yeah.
think. Is that
So
like
yeah,
yeah.
so Woody ended up winning, and yeah, that's a good old Woody. Just up there, going up all around the country. So the cowboy,
Perfect.
yeah,
Oh my God. So Woody the soccer bus. So give this to
exactly.
us. How many miles, how many games, and what is the best experience that the bus has
How many
had?
games? Yeah, so it's 9,000 miles. There's been a lot of miles in terms of like we had to take it up to a place and then back to Orlando to get it fixed. But 9,000 miles, and we did 11 Open Cup games, but then we did other additional stops outside of that. So that brought it, I think, around 17 or 18 different stops that we did on the year. So yeah, lots of different cities, a lot of miles logged. And then I think it's like very difficult to choose like one experience with a bus that is like yes, aside from the Vermont one, that you could kind of choose like yeah, like this is the one, just because I feel like every single stop almost taught us something different. It was again like the conversations that you would have, they would be very similar to all these other ones around the country, but you would almost walk away feeling like, hey, I just made some new friends. In Louisville,
Mm.
I remember it was like a Tuesday at 2 p.m. and the supporters were like, yes, you have to come to this parking lot. It's going to be super fun. And we were having like shots of bourbon with like all the supporters. And then it was one of the high up like executives from the club, like the VP of something or another, and he came down with a specific bottle, and he was like, "Yeah, I come before every game and I give a bottle and I do a toast with everybody."
Mm.
So it was cool to experience that, and I think there were all these different traditions that people had around the country that were great to kind of experience firsthand. So yeah, it's a very difficult to choose, just one that kind of sticks out and that you could say like this was my favorite, because I kind of like to look back at the whole journey and see it more of a just like a whole experience. But yeah, I think that would be
Sign me
my
up for
answer.
that bourbon cheer. Like that sounds great. I'll sign up for that.
Yeah,
Who
yeah.
gives them a bottle of bourbon to toast
It's
with?
crazy. I mean, some of those, and also it was so fun to do the Open Cup because again, it's like 2-0 Wednesday, and it's like the most dedicated people are out at these games. Like I remember, yeah, it was like Louisville that Tuesday, and then the next day was Indianapolis, and then you go up, and it's again you're in a parking lot, and there's just like somebody just it's like 2 p.m., middle of a parking lot. There's like nobody else around, and it's just himself, and he's just blasting music. Maybe drinking some whiskey, and getting ready for the game. So, you really do see like a lot of those like around the country. A lot of those people that are like, yeah, like no matter what day it is, what time it is, it's like I'm going to be here because I support my team, but also I think because of the sense of community that these Open Cup games kind of bring. A lot of times, Christina, you mentioned that, you talk to a lot of people that don't know anything about soccer. And then it's fun, I think, in Open Cup, we also find a lot of people that, yeah, maybe it was their first game, maybe they didn't know much about soccer, but the reason that they were coming out to these games was to spend some time with their community, meet their friends, support the local businesses. So it was cool to get to see all of that. And yeah, I guess just going back to the question, it would be very difficult to choose like one specific moment, just because I think all the main takeaway is that yes, all these things are happening around the country. And I think yeah, that's kind of what makes me the happiest from everything that we've experienced.
Oh, that's awesome. Like, yeah, all of this is awesome. Love that you guys do this and love that you guys have that passion to do it. Because at the end of the day, like, right, some people can only do things based on whether the finance is there. You're like, we'll figure this out. We'll figure the finance.
Yeah, it was it's definitely one of those things where it's
What an
like,
artist. That's all I
yeah,
can
you
say.
don't
What an
it's like there isn't necessarily because it's very tough, I think, obviously with on the agency side of things, it's like, you get what you can to pay rent, and then everything else put it straight to the bus or any of the storytelling initiatives that we do. But at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, when it is a Tuesday at 2 p.m. and, you're getting to talk to all these fans in Louisville, for example, having that nice glass of bourbon with them right before a soccer game, it's like, oh, yeah, it's like super fulfilling to be able to be out there, to be able to kind of capture all these things that are happening. And I think the most rewarding thing is, yeah, when you get to experience all of that, you get to capture it and then you publish it. And then, you see a comment from somebody that, again, is across the country, and they're like, oh, yeah, like I heard that they were doing this. It's so cool what they're doing. Maybe I need to bring that into my own community. I think when you read those
Mm.
things, it's like, oh, okay, like, it makes you like feel good in some sense. And it's like, I wouldn't trade doing this for the world. So yeah.
Oh, definitely.
So cool. Super cool.
Awesome, Lori. Got any other questions? I know I could probably keep Pablo here forever, but I know he's on assignment in California, so thank you for taking that time. Any final
Yeah.
questions, Lori?
No, that was amazing. I love this background. It's fun to see it all evolve, and then like the hard work that you put in, but also just the passion behind it is like thrilling to say the least. So look forward to
Yeah.
seeing what's next. But congrats on everything. It's been fun and to capture what actually is happening around in like smaller communities, but just communities in general in the U.S. is phenomenal.
Yeah, thank you. No, really appreciate it. And honestly, like, I would definitely have to say that when it comes to everybody on the bus, like I mentioned, it is the core team. But for Club 11, since 2018, it's kind of, when we think of Club 11, it's the whole network of contributors that, go out and shoot all the stuff that's happening in their communities, the stories that they like to tell, there. And I feel like, yeah, when it comes, when you mentioned the passion and all of that, I think that's also been something that's been cool to see, is that there are also a lot of other like super talented and very passionate like storytellers around the country, that we've had the honor of working with for the past few years. And it's like cool to see that, yeah, 7 years later, it's kind of like grown into this whole thing. So yeah, no, thank you guys for taking the time and listening to me ramble a little bit. I know usually I'm on the other side of these. I usually am the one that asks the questions and just kind of has to sit back. But I really appreciate you, giving me the opportunity to talk a little bit about Club 11 and this whole journey with the bus. It's been definitely very therapeutic. I feel like I haven't had the time to kind of just sit and think a little bit about, the whole journey that we've been on for the past 7 months. So I definitely appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit about all of that and to get to see both of you. I know Lori, when we did the interview like back in 2021. And I feel like we've kind of spoken throughout the years here and there. And when I heard that we'd have the opportunity to jump on and all of us, get together and talk about soccer, I was like, yeah, this is amazing. So I really appreciate you guys having me on.
Of course. Now, there is one last question from the producers, and I think it's
Okay.
because they themselves want to know what's the best bar. So what's the best bar that you've been able to find? Because I'm pretty sure when Niall comes over for the World Cup, he's going to be looking for the proper bar.
Yeah, I think that's a really, because that's also something that we started like adding recently, that it was like we found ourselves in all these different cities, and sometimes you'd be there for a weekend. So we were like, oh, maybe we should try and find like the best like Premier League bar around the country. So
Yes.
that's something that we've kind of started doing recently. I think one that really stood out to me was if you're gonna be in Boston for the World Cup. The Phoenix Landing is a really cool one if you're a Liverpool fan. But just in
That's
general,
good.
they've had Champions League viewing parties, all of that, and I went to they were playing against Everton, so it was obviously a huge match day, and it was like 7:30 in the morning, and I walked in like you couldn't get a table, it was like could barely open the door. But I'm sure we'll find a few other ones down the road, and if you guys have any recommendations, please let me know.
I love it. Well, everyone, help Pablo find out these bars so he can go and
Please.
write it off as an expense to go drink
Yes.
in the morning. Uh, buy a t-shirt, buy some swag, check out their social media. It helps fund that extra tire that they're going to need inevitably because,
Yeah,
as Lori said,
it
soccer,
always
buses,
happens.
and breakdowns all
Yeah.
happen. It sounds like
Well, listen, I'm not
like
really trying to put that out there, so I just want everybody to be safe. So that I feel like that's the last time that that's going to happen, okay, Pablo? So never again.
we're going to
Yeah, yeah.
unmanifest that one.
It's
Yeah.
funny because I remember when we were doing the interview with Lori, she was telling me about going up the northeast, like when I think it was in I
Oh, when
forget
we
what
ride
team
the
it was.
bus. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. When you had the
It was
bus
the
and you were like, yeah, we
Washington.
like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Washington. Was it the Freedom?
No, actually it was I think it was the Spirit. Yeah, it was like the
The
first
Spirit.
year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and she was
And
like, yeah, we
it was
just
like a league of their own. It's like a league
yeah.
of their own.
I remember she was telling me, she's
On
like,
that
yeah,
bus.
like you're going up and down, like you stop and like eat at McDonald's with all your friends, and then like now it's
Totally.
it's funny that I was like, throughout this year, I found myself thinking of that story. I was like, oh yeah, that's kind of like what Lori was talking about all those years ago. So
Totally.
yeah, fun stuff.
Except you're having whiskeys before games, and we were like trying to play in championships and stuff.
Oh man, yeah, yeah, it's crazy.
The glory days, the glory days. Well,
Yeah.
Pablo, thank you so much for jumping on. Pablo Bayona-Sapag with Club 11. Thanks, and look forward to seeing more of your stories, especially as we lead up to the World Cup.
Yeah, thank you guys, really appreciate it.
Thank you for watching the Soccerish podcast. You can follow us on YouTube, subscribe, and as well, follow us on social media.